what makes a portrait interesting for me, like one of my portraits, the ones that I feel are most successful and the ones that I feel sing the most, are the ones where it's there's love and there's care, but there's also some complexity tied into that.
We're busting philosophy out of the old stuffy lecture hall and setting it loose on the world of creativity. Join us as we explore the unwritten aesthetic. Hello everybody, and welcome back to the Unwritten Aesthetic. But yeah, I'm excited to be talking. I know you said you had some new insights about painting, so I thought we could just start there and see where we go.
Yeah, so it's where do I even start? I guess my idea of what paintings can achieve has drastically changed in the past couple of weeks. And it's been a pretty profound experience. But it's not like a set in stone thing, so I'm very curious to get your thoughts on it. But basically, I used to think that what was magical about painting was the fact that it's like it conveys meaning without a specific content, you know? Like the way one person interprets a painting can be completely different from the way somebody else does. And I thought that was a strength of the medium and not a weakness of it. But over the past year, really, there have been a couple experiences that made me reevaluate if that should be the goal, just meaning anything rather than something specific, or at least the question was raised with this piece, especially this one. Because a lot of people interpreted that as like a erotic or something saying something about sexuality or something like that,
Right.
which is fine with me. I mean, if that's how people want to interpret it, I understand.
Yeah.
Given the pose and the colors and everything like that, but it was just so radically different from how I felt about the painting and what it meant to me that it was really shocking to finally be confronted with this question of how can I paint in such a way that it narrows the scope of possible interpretations, and should that be the goal, should I want to narrow it or somehow guide the viewer into a narrower field of interpretation. And with that one, the most that I could imagine doing to narrow the scope of interpretation was just to add more detail to the face, to give it a personality rather than it just being some kind of faceless body, faceless naked body. So that's when I first was confronted with this issue of like, okay, maybe it would be better if I don't just leave it fully open. Maybe that's just kind of taking the easy way out, when really there are things that I could do in terms of the technique and the composition that would narrow the scope of interpretation in a way that, I don't know, it's complicated. Like, should I do that?
Right.
Because if I don't achieve that, if I don't narrow the scope, or if someone still doesn't interpret it how I interpret it, then that's totally fine with me. But I think it's another challenge of the medium of visual art as a form of communication. It's a challenge that I would like to continue grappling with as the year goes on. And then here's where shit gets crazy. But maybe maybe do you have some initial thoughts on that before I get into the more recent epiphany?
I do, but I'm excited to hear the recent epiphany. So I think this is a really interesting question to start with. This, like, what can a painting actually achieve? Like, what is the actual ability built into an art form? And I think it also, like, in this conversation, there is this assumption of, like, is it possible for there to be a right interpretation? And I think a lot of people going into art that maybe aren't, I don't want to say educated on art because that sounds horrible, but I whether or not, I think the gut reaction before you have been, like, in an art history class, or you start practicing art yourself, if you're just like a layman engaging with art, the gut instinct is like, oh, well, whatever the artist intended is the right interpretation, right?
Mm.
And I think that happens a lot with music too, where it's like, oh, well, what did the songwriter mean by this lyric? Let's look it up and then we'll know what it means.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that, as me, as I was about, that's interesting. I almost called myself an artist, and then I was like, I'm not an artist, and I was like, am I an artist? So that's something for me to explore later.
I
As
would
someone
say
who
so.
occasionally, oh, thank you,
With
who
language?
creates artful things, hi spinach.
Yeah.
As someone who creates artful things, I don't want people to necessarily try and figure out what I'm trying to say with it,
Mm.
but I always am trying to communicate something. And there is something that's kind of nice about someone being like, oh, well, and this probably meant this. It's like, yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Exactly.
But then
Exactly.
at the same time, it's like, but that doesn't necessarily make it correct.
Mhm.
And so I think there's something there about what you're saying that's really interesting. The other thing, too, is you said, should you want to try and narrow this scope? And I think your example of, like, adding detail to the face of the painting behind you is a really great one to illustrate, like, there are ways to narrow scopes, certainly. But can you actually narrow a scope? I think is the question that I'm left with, because even that is like, well, maybe there is something subconscious with someone who hasn't, like, studied art history that would look at a photo with a slightly blurred face with the body in focus, that would just have a more subconscious natural inclination towards the erotic, as opposed to one
Mhm.
that does have the identity a bit more clear.
Mhm.
But also, there's a chance that not, even though that is a technique that it's like me analyzing a painting, like in an art history class, it would be like, oh, well, and you can see that the face is in detail and the eyes are making contact with the viewer. And, like, what are all the different things that this should allude to, right?
Yeah.
And so, even if you do have that, can you actually ever narrow the scope? I don't know,
Yeah.
because there is, while there's something about understanding the, like, full history and medium and technique and different approaches to art that does give you this added layer of understanding, there's also something really beautiful and magical for the layman waltzing into any museum and being able to have an experience with a painting that doesn't make their reading any less valid. So I'm like,
Yes.
even if you were to try and shift this approach, I'm like, I don't know what, I'm like, can you actually do that? I don't know. But
Yeah.
maybe, like, the percentage of readings that you would get, like, the ratio of readings might change from alignment with you. But I don't know.
Yeah.
Those are my thoughts.
And it differs so much depending on the viewer too, you know? And especially with this piece, I I wouldn't want to rule out the possibility of people interpreting it as a purely erotic image, because I think that the fact that that is, in my from what I've heard, the most common initial interpretation is extremely interesting. Um and the fact that that interpretation is the most common, uh that does kind of welcome in the opportunity to go, okay, well, why? Why is that the first interpretation? What is it about somebody playfully, like, putting their body on display, like in a way that to me feels very playful and not necessarily sexual. Why did I jump to that interpretation? And so that kind of opens up a new possibility, like a double layered interpretation.
Yes.
That if I were to rule out the possibility that it could be interpreted erotically, that new layer wouldn't be possible. Like that layer of like a sort of self-reflexive interpretation.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
why does the nude body initially, like when it's put on display, why is that automatically
Right.
erotic?
And this growing conversation out of that, right? Like we've talked in the past before about like the banana taped to the wall. Is that in and of itself a piece of art? Is the conversation that exists around it the art, right? And I think there's something similar there to what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And the fact that whoever is viewing, like this question of whether the interpretive scope can be narrowed, it does depend a lot on the viewer still. And this is especially a point where I would love to get your thoughts on this. And it's kind of hard because the painting in question, I haven't showed it to anyone except the person that it was for. So basically, to get into the epiphany thing, I recently painted a portrait for a friend of mine for her birthday. And it was a very like the painting process itself was very interesting because we would like hang out during the daytime and then I'd go home and work on the portrait. So it was almost like every day me working on the portrait was a sort of meditation on my relationship with this person.
Yeah.
And so, and also the knowledge that like going into a painting and starting it with the intention of giving it away definitely changes how I paint. It's kind of like when you're writing something for an application versus writing something for a friend. Like that's a different target audience.
Right.
And so that's going to change the way you write and the tone of your writing. And so it was, I don't even know how to describe it really, but it in the process of working on it, I came to the realization that the subject of a portrait painting is not the subject per se, but intersubjectivity. Like it's not purely a mirror of the artist. It's not purely a depiction of the sitter or the person in the painting. It's a two-way mirror in a way.
Yeah.
And it got to this point where it was like a very weird crossing over point where it was looking a lot like her. And the technique I used initially was very realistic. But then as time went on, and my like dynamic with this person became like more complicated, not in like a bad way, but just like the more you get to know someone, like your dynamic with someone is always sort of shifting and evolving over time. And all of those dynamic changes were baked into each layer of the portrait in a really fascinating way. And almost to the point where I began dreading actually showing it to her because she didn't want to see. Usually I'm very eager to show like, oh, here it is today, here it is tomorrow. And it's like the tiniest little incremental change that no one but me can notice. But she didn't want to see it until it was completely done. And so it got to the point where it was like, it almost felt like a sort of confession showing her this.
Yeah.
Because it was really like a documentation of how, like, it wasn't just what she looked like, it was how I saw her and how important she was to me.
You saw your relationship, like you said, the two-way mirror, because it's not just how you see her, but how you feel after you spend time together, right? And how you want her to see you, and also this like how you want someone else to think that you see them.
Yeah. And that was the complicated part too, because it was like, this feels so, it felt so vulnerable. But at the same time, it's like, all right, well, that may be for me, because I can see like the sort of like the scars of the layers underneath that have been like buried over by like a completely different painting technique. And like some days my painting technique was like more frantic and like heavy-handed with the paint, and then other days it was very precise and like with the smallest brush I have. And it created like it I don't have it anymore. And it's weird that I don't feel like sharing it. Like it almost feels too special to share. I probably will eventually, because mostly because of this question that's kind of hanging over my head now after this experience, that I'll get into. But um, it it was really unlike anything I'd ever painted before.
Yeah.
And then the crazy part was like, so basically, like, it wasn't just, I don't even know how to describe it. Like, all that I felt for her, she felt seeing it. And
Okay, I was gonna ask you, like, not only what her reaction was, but what was your reaction to seeing her see it, right? That it's like this weird three-way mirror now in
yeah,
like
that's
watching
also
someone watch
that was also
the
an experience
mirror.
I've never really had before. I mean, with this little portrait in the middle here,
Mhm.
like, I showed her the portrait, but it wasn't like, uh, well, for one, it wasn't like a gift, really. It was
Right.
like, obviously, because I still have it. But it wasn't. It was so. It was very surreal, and at first she saw it like on her own, and then she was like, "Come here." It was in the studio, but she. I hope this is okay that I'm sharing this, but she said that it reminded her how much she liked herself, and that like it it looked like how she looked when she felt resolute. um in like a Heideggerian sense, but that's we don't need to talk about Heidegger in this episode. um
Also
but
say just brief like production note, if you want to say whatever you want to say and then ask her
yeah.
what she might be comfortable with, I can edit out
Mhm.
anything that needs to be edited out, so don't worry
Yeah.
about. Yeah.
And she also said something like it felt like her Mitsein also. I'm sorry, I have to bring up Heidegger in every episode, but like I can't help it. But basically, like what her being with others and like her being not for, but being with others was.
Mm.
Like she imagined, like I imagine my mom seeing this and thinking like that's my daughter.
Wow.
Yeah,
Which
and
literally is like exactly what you were talking about in terms of your experience creating it. That is like, it
yeah,
is a meditation on our being with.
exactly. And it was just so crazy to not only that she liked it and that she, because that was great. Obviously, I was concerned about that.
Can you imagine if she was like,
I hate
so
it.
you hate me?
Thanks. Thanks. I hate it.
Thanks, I hate it.
No, it was just like to not only, I don't know, like for the scope of interpretations to basically collapse into a single point where it overlaps with mine.
Well,
It
and
was,
because of the double mirroring, it's like there is something about a mirror in the interpretation or like interpretive engagement too that is like, ooh, would it have been possible? I mean, obviously it would have been possible for her not to have that reaction or interpretation, but there is something that's like, was her interpretation just your interpretation? Like, are they just the same thing? Or are they distinct? You said that the interpretations collapse into the same thing and there's an overlap there. So I'm like, is there actually, even if the interpretations are quote unquote the same, obviously they're slightly different because they're from
Of
different
course, yeah.
perspectives,
I
but
was just being dramatic.
right. But my
They
question
collapse
is,
down to a.
is it the same thing because of the nature of the painting? Being with, like, are they two different interpretations or is it the same, but because the painting is this mirror, it's like, well, of course, I don't want to use the word true, but a better word isn't coming to me. True interpretation is the two different interpretations as one.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, like, I think even, and this is where the experience, like, it was very profound, but I feel like the insight of that experience is not set in stone yet because, for one, um, it was a painting of her, and it was for her, and, um, and obviously, since it's sort of a portrait of, like, the intersubjectivity of, like, me and, like, my dynamic with her,
Right.
she has some keen insight into my sort of attitude going into painting this.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, is it one singular interpretation? No, because that's just, the interiority of subjectivity would not allow such a thing to happen. But, but it got closer than I've ever been able to accomplish before.
Mm.
And it was really crazy
Yeah.
because, like, part of the reason I was so nervous about it and part of the reason it did feel like a confession is not just because I could see how much love and care went into the painting and how it was painted with love, but also the fear of the knowledge that how people interpret art is very, it's the Wild West,
Right.
nobody
Well,
knows what's going to happen. And so, like, to to experience that and to see that, like, I did it was
yeah.
really crazy.
So, two questions. One, maybe not as relevant, but that came up a little bit ago that I think we may have briefly touched on in the past, but um what feels more vulnerable to you, painting a self-portrait or painting someone else? And in what way? Because I would imagine, like, there are some self-portraits that feel very vulnerable to show anyone, right? That it is this, like, dimension of how you view yourself that is like, you don't necessarily want to stand up somewhere and be like, yeah, I think I'm cool. And like that feels weird to say, and it's like, well, what if a painting says that? But then there is this added vulnerability in the portrait of someone else that isn't just like how I think of myself, and you can kind of temper how much of a self-portrait I would think that you put that into, but it's almost like when it's about someone else, at least from the way you're describing it, it was almost impossible not to bake this feeling
Yeah.
into it. And I wonder, like, which feels more vulnerable in that way. And is that true that you can temper a little bit of that with a self-portrait in a way that you couldn't with someone else? And then my other thought was also, with showing her this, was the trepidation or any hesitancy with this feeling of confession, was it more like a fear that she wouldn't get it or a fear that she would?
Mm. That's a good question.
Because I think for me, sometimes showing someone a poem, there is this deep, like, well, if they get it, then they'll see something, but also if they don't get it, then they don't
Yeah.
see.
Like, my initial thought, response was to say both a little bit, but
Yeah.
that's kind of a cop-out, you know? But I do think it is kind of it's both, like, it's
Yeah.
exactly what you described, like, oh, if they get it, then they're seeing, like, something like, they're really seeing me. They're really seeing how I feel. But if they don't get it, then, you know
They don't get it. And that's kind of
yeah.
crushing.
But with art, I mean, with visual art, it still goes back to the fact, like, but still it still conveys meaning without a
Yeah.
specific content, and that's still an achievement of some kind, but it's such a different one
Yeah.
when I can convey something without words,
Yeah.
like, exactly how I feel without words is so crazy, and I don't think I've ever done that. I mean, the closest that I've had to this experience was with, like, the OG door painting,
Mhm.
and I might have explained this before. um, there was with that one especially, like, the myriad of possible interpretations was very large? Myriad? There was
Yeah.
a lot of interpretation, and, there was one woman who purchased an art print of it, and she messaged me, and she's like, "Oh, I'm so excited I was able to get one. I work at a center, like, a shelter, basically, for domestic violence, like, survivors, and I want to hang this in our lobby because it's, like, to me, it's, like, such a strong symbol of new beginnings and hope." And, like, it still gives me goosebumps just thinking
Yeah.
about that because I didn't paint that to mean that.
Right.
But although in hindsight, it is quite interesting, uh, thinking back to, like, what was going on in my life at that time that I was painting that and that she took this interpretation from it. But,
Yeah.
that painting didn't mean anything specific to me. Like, at that time, I wasn't really thinking about the sort of reflective philosophizing about my artistic practice wasn't really happening so often back then. Like, the
Okay.
intersection of my philosophy and my painting didn't really become, like, a conscious activity for me until, like, a year and a half ago? Wait, when was
S-
that? No, until recently, basically,
Sure,
relatively
sure.
recently.
So follow up on that because earlier with your question of should you want to limit the scope of interpretation, my question to your question was, can you even?
Mhm.
Now, after hearing this, the other thing that is coming to me is like, is it possible not to? Because,
Mm.
like you said, you weren't thinking consciously about um, that that aspect of your painting, and yet there was still something clearly that this
Yeah.
woman. It's like in is that just random chance? Maybe. But of course, I make meaning out of those connections. I think coincidence,
Yeah.
especially with something like this, it's like clearly she was able to, in my view, feel something that had to be in there somewhere, even if it wasn't
Yeah.
conscious for you. That it's like at this time of painting, there all of those feelings and experiences are being baked in to the process. So it's like, is there any way that you
Yeah.
can't limit the scope of experience at all or
Right.
interpretation at all?
No, that is super interesting because, like I said, with that piece, I wasn't trying to convey anything specific. Like,
Yeah.
as deep as my sort of philosophizing about my paintings went at that time, it was like, oh, basically, painting in such a way that people can see, like, the surreal in the real was kind of how I described it back then. Like, to see something as mundane as a door and see how, like, how
Yeah.
how crazy cool and beautiful and like, like, just the most mundane things can stop you in your tracks sometimes, and that was as deep as the meaning went for me in terms of, like, the intentionality going into it.
Mhm.
Um, but like you said, like, I in hindsight, I don't think I could have avoided baking into the painting some of those things, and maybe that is why it resonated with so many people. Um, because that was a crazy time in my life, A lot of stupid, shitty things going on at that time. And and it was like the longest I ever spent on a painting. Also in hindsight, probably because I didn't prime my canvases back then, but yeah, and part of me feels like I was painting doors so much because I did feel trapped. Not because of the new beginnings, you know, which but I mean that it is a sort of threshold.
Well,
It's very fascinating.
I've been learning a lot about chaos magic. This does connect, I promise.
Oh, cool. I don't even care if it doesn't. It sounds cool. I've never heard of this.
Really? It sounds scary, but I'm like, it's actually
cool.
more like practical magic than anything else. But there's this concept in chaos magic that is, when there's a wall, you build the door, right? Like,
Ooh.
you find a way to use the material that's in front of you to create the door. And I'm like, that's exactly what you were doing. You felt a wall and created your door.
Yeah.
And it also makes me think of a lyric from the musical Waitress, which is about, similarly to this woman's interpretation, this song is about domestic violence. And there's this line that's like, no matter how many doors we dreamed up, we never took one step through. And it's the daughter of a mom who saw her mom being abused by her dad. And it's like you said, this threshold of stepping through, and then this woman having this reaction to it that is, you're at the threshold. You can step through now.
Yeah.
You're safe here. Like,
yeah.
I don't know. I can really make meaning of that.
Yeah. Yeah. 'Cause when I look at it, like it doesn't, like, at least to me, like it doesn't really feel like hopeful. I don't know. Like it is very dark, like in terms of the colors. It's very dark. And yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'll be honest, I never read it as hopeful until you said that woman had that reading. I always kind of read it as
like it feels heavy.
Yeah.
Like the colors feel like heavy to me.
Almost like the feeling of when you've had a really long day and you get home and you close the door behind you and it's like you can is kind of the feeling that it always gave me. But also the painting behind you that apparently many people have erotic readings of, I always viewed very much as like divine femininity, but in a friendship sense, not in this like mothering erotic sense, but in this like bodies are silly. you know?
It's like it's like being at home in the body.
Yeah.
And
so
like it could have been someone of any sex or gender, really.
Yeah.
At least that's how I feel about it. But again, like it's not I want to be careful when I say that, not to be like, I don't want the painting to be like a negation of femininity or like a rejection of it, because it's like being at home in the body, not quite in virtue of one's sex or gender, but also not despite. It's like something in the middle. It's just part of it.
Yeah.
And maybe I can do a sneak preview. I don't know if this is on topic at this point, but I do have another door that is the original door, but it's in the daytime, and I haven't posted it on Instagram lately because I've been really bad about social media stuff lately, but I'll just... There it is. Yeah. I don't know if it's done, but it's on the wall, so I guess that means it's done. Did I sign it? I haven't signed it yet.
So funny. I don't know if it's done, but it's on the wall.
It's on the wall, so that must mean that it's done. Well, not that it's finished, but that I seem to have stopped working on it, so but that one I did recently. And when did I do that one? It's on a primed canvas, which was lovely. So nice to work on a primed canvas.
So nice.
But that one I'm curious what people will... Oh, sorry, I should talk into the microphone. That one I am curious what people will think about it, because I think that one I was conscientiously sort of coming to this realization that I was painting doors because I felt sort of trapped at the time. And I've painted so many doors, which is so crazy.
Right.
But
well, and
but
I
still,
wanted
the goal was not to narrow the scope of interpretation into like, I don't want people to see the doors and be like, oh, the artist felt trapped. I would hate that, honestly.
right,
And
right.
honestly, I was, before this moment, I had intended to not reveal this secret of why I was painting the doors, because I do think it's so lovely that the interpretive scope is so wide.
Yeah.
And doors are already like such a symbolically rich sort of,
Totally.
well, meaning they're a rich symbol of possible interpretations.
Yes.
Um,
Totally.
And so I'd like that to remain the case.
To stay,
but
absolutely. So
yeah.
to go back to this epiphany, and you said you still kind of have this question, I can totally understand why. I think there's a lot here. But now that you've gifted this painting to her, it's not even yours anymore, but in a way it will always be yours. Yeah. Tell me more about what that kind of is now. Even though, like you said, of course, it's not fixed. So this is not concretized.
Well, one of the reasons why it doesn't feel like the epiphany, it happened, and it definitely radically shifted what I think is possible in a painting in terms of like how much of my intention can I actually convey to the viewer once the painting is finished. I think before I was a little bit, not pessimistic, but, I didn't think that much was possible.
Yeah.
Really, if somebody else's interpretation of my painting overlapped with my intentions going into the painting process, I think I really just viewed it more as a coincidence than anything.
Yeah.
And now that I know that it is possible to kind of narrow the scope of interpretation to such a degree, the question is, first of all, like, how dependent is that on the viewer? Because again, she's the only person who's seen it. Like me and her are the only people who've seen this painting. And like what would other people think? Like,
It
which
would
is
be
why
interesting
eventually
to
I
see
would
what
like
her
to
mom
share it.
thinks.
Yeah.
Like, I would love to know that.
I know, right? So eventually I would like to share it, kind of to do field research, really.
Yeah,
But I mean, I am quite proud of it, and it is pretty unique compared to portraits I've done in the past. And that also kind of introduces this realization that an ongoing reflection and being really intentional and thoughtful about how, like, philosophizing about painting as you're painting, it can really enhance the painting. I think because I knew it was going to be a gift, there was extra care paid to, oh, if I paint it this way, like, or no, not even that, but just a continuous reflection on it, and like, oh, I painted in this way today, and maybe that's indicative of how I'm feeling today about like whatever,
Yeah.
About like my experience with this person today versus like yesterday or whatever. And I kind of forgot what the question was.
Oh, that's okay.
I'm sorry.
No.
Sorry, I forgot what the
No,
question was.
that's okay. I think I was just asking, like, what your current kind of question is that you're still questioning.
Right.
But I do like the at least partial kind of conclusion of philosophizing amidst the practice does change it. Like,
It
that
does.
is clear. Whether or not you want to say that makes the painting quote unquote better or worse or more valid or more impactful, like, we could debate the merits, I suppose.
Absolutely.
But I think it's clear that from this experience that it's like, no, it is imbuing something in it that
Yeah.
is remarkable in that it's really able to be remarked upon, but also remarkable that there is this like
Aw.
energetic exchange with, which it's like, of
Yeah.
course, you know, like we all feel that when you see a painting and tears come to your eyes. It's like, well,
Right.
how does that happen? But it's like,
Yeah.
is this how that happens?
Perhaps. Yeah, it's kind of, it reminds me of, I don't remember which episode this was, but I think we were talking about this one
Mm-hmm.
where like there's stuff written on the back of it about
Yes.
how
Yeah.
I interpret it. And you were asking like, oh, what if you did an experiment where like you wrote something on the back of it?
Yeah.
And if that would change people's feelings towards it. And I feel like painting intentionally and sort of like reflecting upon each layer, um, is a kind of, it's a different sort of way of writing on the back of the canvas.
Mm-hmm.
It's a different sort of energetic exchange, one that's probably more powerful than just writing on the back of the canvas.
Mm-hmm.
That's sort of more of an interesting Easter egg, like sort of
Right.
like you know,
One's like a
um,
potent ingredient and the other is like
mhm, a
um
sprinkle on top,
yeah,
like
yeah,
a cherry on
exactly. The
top.
cherry yes,
Uh,
yes.
yeah, yeah. Um, but yeah, I guess I'm really questioning like how I am very curious how other people would feel about this portrait. Maybe they feel nothing towards it. But to me, like when I look at it, like it looks like it was painted with love. Like it
Mm.
looks like if I didn't know the person, I'd be like, oh, the artist really cared about this person. And um, I'm very excited that that was communicated to the person that
Yeah.
I was gifting it to. But I guess the skepticism towards the epiphany that I have is still just like that could very much be dependent on the fact that it was her and it was a
Right.
painting of
Well,
her.
and this even like psychological kind of piece of it that it's like, does the painting have anything to do with it actually? Would she have had that reaction regardless
Yeah.
of like there's just a stick figure on it and she's like, that's how I see myself.
Maybe,
But like you don't
that's
know. But
I have no idea, but it's very possible.
of course I'm inclined to say no. But
I mean, if it's a
again,
literal stick figure,
well,
she'd
right.
probably be like, "How did you spend a whole month on this?"
Silly.
Yeah.
But
Can you imagine? Like the whole month I'm like, "Oh yeah, like today I did this layer and it's looking really good." And it's like
it's just a stick
and
figure
then
that's so thick with layers of the canvas.
yeah, yeah. It's like this thick from the side,
Yeah,
just like,
yeah.
oh, that'd be silly.
That'd be really silly.
But it is like, uh, I'm sure we mentioned this last week with the Clee stuff, like the multidimensional simultaneity of it, um, as a sort of like a cumulative thing of how I feel
Yeah.
about a person. Um, yeah, I also painted with words. I've been trying to work words into the painting process, like in the, I guess, pattern of brushstrokes.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but not in a way, I don't want them to be legible.
Sure.
Like that one, the title of it is written in like a clear painting medium on the side. It's a
Interesting.
little glossy. Like when I took a picture of it, you can still see it, but I'm sure once I varnish it, it won't be.
Yeah.
So just like the texture, like the scar of what was underneath
Mm,
still shines through a little bit.
yeah.
But I don't know. I don't know if I mean, I feel like this concern about interpretation is something faced by artists of all kinds and by like
Yeah.
I don't know if you have a similar experience with just like putting your ideas on the internet for the world to see and
You know, it's
like even though
so
words do narrow it already, but like it's still,
yeah. No, you
otherwise poetry wouldn't be like so captivating if
yeah.
at least in my opinion, if there was only one interpretation to the words.
Yeah.
Philosophy would
Totally,
be quite
totally.
boring as well.
Yes. No, absolutely. I think that it's actually funny because that's very much over the last like 2-ish months. I think I've really been like, one of my goals has been to release myself from any tie to anyone's interpretation except my own, and then
Mm.
just learn from other people's interpretation, not as a reaction to me, but as a I don't know what the best way to put that is, but like as a thing in and of itself that sure is like in reaction to this thing that I created that has to do with my ideas, but it's like completely separate from any personhood, which just sounds very much like, oh, just put something out there and don't feel so personally attacked when people comment on it. But it does feel a little bit deeper than that.
Yeah.
That is like, I've really been trying to create things that I am excited to create that, like, as a viewer would resonate with me or elicit something in me, and then let other people's reactions almost stand on their own. And then if I have a response to it, thinking of my response to their reaction as like me commenting on their art, like their
Yeah,
comment
it's like
as
it becomes a dialogue versus like, oh, this person's comment is indicative of my selfhood. Like, oh, they've pointed out some aspect of me that I wasn't aware of. Instead of viewing it like that, because then like the internet comments would chip away at your sense of identity, and that wouldn't be very
right,
good. uh,
right.
but to view it as a dialogue,
Yeah. Well,
almost.
and even this added like, because I've really broadened my definition of what like creativity and art and creation means. And so I
Mm.
think like even if it's just a stream of consciousness like TikTok or whatever, and it's just a comment on a TikTok, I'm like, well, my stream of consciousness TikTok is something creative that I did that I had to get into a certain mode to do. And that is now being like delivered into space, into the world. Um, and that was created in reaction to all sorts of things. Largely,
Right.
like I'll create a TikTok in response to like one inciting kind of moment from like a podcast or a work of art or something that I see. But someone's comment, even though maybe it's not as like extensive as like a 5-minute long TikTok, is still just as like quote unquote valid or important as a creative work, because yeah, it's in response to my thing, but my thing was in response to other things. So
Yeah.
it's not the
It's
it's not like I'm trying to not privilege the quote unquote like original work
Yeah,
quite
because
so much.
sometimes internet comments are just stupid, and I think
Yeah.
it's okay to
Yeah.
say that. Like, I saw one on one of our, like, sorry, I keep moving around. I'm sure you can hear the chair squeaking on the ground.
No,
But
you're good.
I saw one of our like shorts, and so like it was something about art, whatever, as we do, and the comment was something like, "Oh, I wonder who these types of people vote for," and I'm like, dude, get out of
I
here. Like,
did respond to that with a very
you did?
extensive response.
Wait, really? Oh, I didn't
Yeah,
read it.
because,
I just
well,
thought it was so stupid. I'm like, you just want to be in a bad mood. Like,
yeah,
why are you so sour?
it was literally like, I wonder what type of people these people vote for. And I just
Yeah.
responded as though he was actually curious about the question. And
I
so
was
I
like,
was like,
thank you for asking. Here are my political
literally,
views.
wait, it makes me
Yeah.
want to, like,
Yeah, I would love
it
to
kind of
read
makes me
it.
want to read it. Wait. So,
But it does remind me of what you were saying about the oh yeah, I kind of summarized what we discussed that one time. Like a painting, to echo Klee, is well described with the Greek word tetelestai. It is finished, as Jesus said on the cross. In the perfect tense, the verb signifies an action completed in the past with continuing results into the present. So it's the same sort of thing with the TikTok.
Yeah.
You know, the TikTok is finished, but the ongoing dialogue, sometimes more sophisticated, and other times more, you know, angry,
Totally.
salty people on the internet,
Yes.
trying to stir up some drama. But I would,
Right.
anyways, that was just to summarize the
No,
thing about
no. I think
that.
that's
But I would love to hear your response
yeah.
to
So
this guy.
this was about like artistic process or something, and I wonder who this attitude votes for? Question mark.
Yeah.
My response: thanks for your curiosity. I have lots of thoughts on how this existentialist style of philosophy connects to justice work. This clip examples the basis of some of our existentialist leanings, but an important continuation of this philosophy is how it requires the individual to make life meaningful for themselves. For me, in the bottom of this clip, because I was like, I felt comfortable saying that for you, but I was like, I don't want to totally speak for Lauren. This deeply integrates connection and community, purpose and creativity, spirituality, and justice work. If we are all in an inherently meaningless world together, no one's person's meaning is any more important or valid than anyone else's. And yet, our society often values certain individuals' ideals about meaning more than others based on identity, privilege, economic status, etc. If you don't just believe but practice this philosophy that insists that you fight for everyone to have an equal, equitable opportunity to make their own meaning so that you have the most expansive experience of meaning possible. In my personal politics, this expresses as deeply progressive.
Yes, that was so good.
Literally, I was
that
like,
was so good.
I'm just going to respond
I love
as though he's actually asking a question.
Yeah, respond as it. I feel like that's such a good way to respond too.
Yeah.
Just because, like, I think it's weird. The thing I found so funny about that comment is that it's not outwardly mean, but it's like you can tell that it was written in a way to be like a snarky, like, I wonder who this person votes.
Well,
You know,
and
it's like,
another
well,
one,
why don't
like,
you just ask?
Yeah.
Like I think it would. I don't know. I mean, yeah, it's just like almost as if that would be offensive.
Right.
You know?
To ask the question in and of itself is offensive, but there was another one that I saw on a short that I didn't respond to.
Very eloquent
like,
response, though, by the way.
Thank you. Probably spent way too much time on it, but
I think it's great.
Thanks. Well, it was actually kind of interesting to think about because I do often think about like this should apply to our actual lived life, and we talk about like living your philosophy out, and it's like, how would I actually describe that to someone? Like, I understand it, but what is that connecting piece that I want to illustrate for someone who may not just get it, you know?
Right. Yeah, it reminds me of the ethics of ambiguity, sort of.
Yeah,
Well, it is a very basic existentialist idea. Like when you turn to the ethical, I guess, ramifications of existentialism, where it's like, oh, if each of us is sort of like the sole arbiter of meaning in our lives, but we also have this shared understanding of things that not only informs our individual meanings and truths that we give our lives, but we also continue to form and we preserve and shape that shared understanding of things as well. And like to be able to, like, I feel like the sort of existentialist ethics, it makes sense that it would be giving or living your life in a way that capitalizes on your own freedom while also while not infringing on the freedom of others, and ideally living in a way that capitalizes on your freedom and somehow also facilitates other people to capitalize on their own freedom.
Well, and I think that inherently capitalizing on or like supporting
it's an
other
interesting
people's
phrase,
freedom,
interesting verb choice,
right? But I like it. I think it does capture something, because to capitalize on your freedom, it makes me think about the like, well, you have privilege. That means it, like, with privilege, how do you use that privilege to make the world better, right? If you've been given this privilege, like, how do you capitalize on it? How do you capitalize on any freedom you've been given over other people just inherently? But also, I'm like, I do believe that helping other people capitalize on their freedom is helping me capitalize on my freedom and part of how I do that too. So there is an interesting relationship there. But yeah, I was like, I'm just going to act like he's actually questioning this. But it is interesting when you can sense, I mean, once again, theoretically, he maybe was trying to actually ask the question, but likely
why did I
not.
immediately interpret it that way? That's like,
But also
but
likely
how do we know
not,
that?
because his attitude is baked in. And it's like, it feels like the same thing that you're getting at with this conversation too. Well, like someone else
Yeah.
on another one commented, what's better for your art career? Technique, passion, or rich friends? And I was like, damn, I don't know. What a weird thing to...
Was that a question for me? I think that person might be under the false impression that I'm selling an exorbitant amount of my art, which I'm sorry to disappoint you and myself, but I'm not.
Right. I wish you could be mad at me for that reason.
Yeah. Honestly, I wish I could respond and be like, you're right. I do have rich friends who love buying my art. I have wonderful patrons who... No, I mean, like, I sell art prints from time to time, but, like,
it certainly is not enough to pay your bills, you know, even though it's like a nice
like every
added
once
bonus.
in a while, like with the door, people really liked that one, and so I sold a lot of art prints of that one. Since then, I've probably sold like a couple. Like this year, probably a couple. This year's felt so long. But
has felt
no,
long.
I'm sorry to disappoint you.
Yeah.
If you know any rich art lovers that you can send my way, though, please let me know in the comments.
I would love to be friends with them. That would be great.
Yeah, I'd love to be. Not so they can buy my art, just to friends, you know.
Just to be friends.
Just for friends.
Just to be friends.
Yeah.
You know. That's so funny.
That's funny.
Yeah. I think
I
don't
love
even
the
know
approach
how we...
of just responding. Like, yeah, I don't know how we got into this.
Oh,
basically,
my
like
reaction to putting things out there. So, in terms of like narrowing the scope of interpretation, I think my approach recently has been, don't think about the scope of interpretation. Stop it. Because that's my goal has been more one about authenticity and in kind of a Nietzschean sense, I would say. Nietzschean sense. That is like in verbal formats like podcasts and posting on social media, you are inherently talking a talk. How can you walk the walk in how you talk the talk? And so often I catch myself in the midst of creating being like, okay, but what could that elicit a response of? Or what does that make that sound like? Okay, make sure you add this contingency here, or this caveat here, or this added detail here, or make sure you link that back to this. Don't use that word because that sounds too pretentious. Don't use that word because that sounds too dumb. Don't, like at every single end of the spectrum, both from I want this to communicate exactly what I'm trying to communicate all the way down to I hope people like me. And it's like, just throw all of it out and truly just kind of be and try to let presence be the art that is on offer. But also, obviously, there's something else that I'm trying to communicate too about, like, I'm trying to value my presence, and I think you should too, because your presence is also really important.
Right. It's so complicated because, like, I think I would agree with you there, like, but it is a sort of balance, like, it is a sort of spectrum, because on the one hand, to care so much and to be so, like, concerned with how your words, how your art, in whatever format it takes, is going to be received is suffocating and can actually destroy the art and completely, like, it can lead one to completely lose sight of the message that they were trying to get across in the first place. And I think it's definitely powerful and like ideal to not be suffocated by, you know, um by your work's reception. But then to completely negate it would just be a sort of like solipsism. I cannot say
Yeah,
that word for the life of me. But it would, like, at the end of the day, the goal is to communicate something. The goal is to
exactly.
convey something. And so the balancing act of doing that in a way that is intelligible to people outside of yourself while also not being bogged down by um the risk and the ambiguity that arises from just
Yeah.
talking, just saying what you think
Right.
on the
Well,
internet.
and being comfortable with your own ambiguity, just kind of hanging in the balance, but also not being afraid to nail things down either. Like, that's something else I've realized I really shy away from is like, I want to be, but there could be this other interpretation. And it's like, no,
Yeah,
but sometimes
like
you do
qualifying
just,
all your
yeah.
statements. I do that too
Um,
sometimes.
Sometimes it's like, no, Reese, you do just think this thing. Just say it with your whole chest. Like,
Yeah,
come on.
for sure.
Um, on the question that came up for me a little bit ago that I think relates to this too is now that you've had this epiphany, beautiful experience with your friend, obviously part of the question is like, how did that happen? Um, is it just between the two of you? Could it happen? Like, do other people share this interpretation, reaction? Do you want to strive to create that in your art in the future? Is it something that feels like it gives your art to you more merit at all? And if so, like, how would you try and do that? Or maybe it doesn't feel like it adds more merit or validity, but it's just this interesting other um, wrinkle that you could add into specific pieces if you were trying to
Yeah.
communicate something specifically in this way. And if so, how would you try and do that to a more public audience too? Maybe.
Yeah, very, very good questions. Well, to start, I mean, right after this experience, I wrote in my journal, to be an artist is to continue loving despite it all. Because it's not just a portrait of pure love, the what makes a portrait interesting for me, like one of my portraits, the ones that I feel are most successful and the ones that I feel sing the most are the ones where it's there's love and there's care, but there's also some complexity tied into that. And that can be for a multitude of reasons. Like, it could be maybe you start a portrait of someone and then maybe you have like a falling out or something. And so your dynamic with someone changes so radically that the paint, like, that's also baked into the painting
Yeah.
in an interesting way. Not saying that happened, but just trying to give some other examples.
Right.
Or
Right.
like, in this case, like, she was moving away basically right after her birthday. And so,
Mm,
like, that inevitable uh like her inevitable leaving was sort
yeah.
of um baked into that as well. So it's never just pure like love in the sense of like sunshine, rainbows, whatever,
Yeah.
but to continue like for that to paint with love is just, I don't know, it's just I don't know. I mean, I don't even know if it's visible to other people besides the two of
Yeah.
us. Um but it's it's beautiful, but it's also kind of bittersweet because it makes me think, like, I can't really paint a portrait like that if I don't really feel drawn to someone in that way,
Yeah.
or if I don't have like a special connection to the person that way, because um like I didn't just want to paint her immediately, and like I asked to paint
Yeah.
her as a birthday gift. She wasn't like, which is kind of funny. But I didn't want to paint her just because of like how her face looked. I like
Right.
it was a very specific moment where she was explaining something about like the way she thinks and like her own sort of um mode of philosophizing, and in that moment I wanted to paint her. And that's usually how it goes with other people that I want to paint. It's like a particular moment, and and in the same moment that I feel so much love, or so like I feel so drawn to someone, or maybe just like at the very least intrigued. But no, that sounds bad. But like when I feel drawn to someone, or I feel like I've gotten a glimpse into the way that they see the world, that's the same moment that I want to paint them.
Yeah.
And
It's
so it's not really face-based at all, but it also complicates things because it's like are not it's not common for me to meet people like that. But I would
yeah.
love to paint more portraits. So
Right.
it's kind of
Right.
and like I have to
Yeah.
practice. It would be good to do studies. Um so kind of
Yeah.
having this like the
It's
pinnacle of portraiture, but also like I still gotta practice.
right. It's interesting too because I do think there's a parallel. I mean, please correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like there's a bit of a parallel to like some of your still life work as well, where you've said in the past, like you'll see just like I'll do the directorial thing of like an image that like you capture and it just kind of strikes you. Similarly to the OG door, that it was like, oh, seeing it in this light and
Yeah,
it
yeah.
just like resonated, and you'll take a picture and use that moment as the reference. It's like almost mentally using this moment of that person as the reference, but the same way that like you painted that same door again and it looks totally different. The lighting is different, the colors are different, like even still life
Mhm.
images completely shift and change and are very dynamic. Like humans are arguably more dynamic, and it's like there's even more
Yeah.
in that it's like you can't really instantiate all of that into one thing, but you're trying to
But
in
that's the
this portrait.
challenge.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
That's the challenge, yeah. Like to capture movement and to capture like dynamic change in a portrait, like that's the goal. I would hate for a portrait to feel like a static image of one person at one particular moment in time. And really the moment that I took the reference photo for her painting, it could have been any moment after that really. Like
Mhm.
um because of like every interaction after I started the painting with her was somehow also a reference photo in a way for
Yeah.
the portrait.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, and I just hope that I hope that I can paint other portraits like that. And like with self-portraits, to answer a question from a long time ago, it really feels quite different because one of the reasons I paint so many self-portraits is mostly because like I always have someone to paint because my face is always with me.
Yeah.
I'm always with myself, so I always have someone to paint. Um and there the like it's not so much a cumulative like an amalgamation of dynamic moments and changes. It's really just sort of uh one moment of my ongoing life movement.
Yeah. That's
So
really
it really
interesting.
kind of captures something completely different, at least for me. Like when
Yeah.
I look at my self-portraits, they don't really feel like me, except for this one. That's my favorite one. Um, yeah, but most of them is just to have someone to paint. So,
Yeah.
um,
That's so interesting
yeah.
to the difference between like with a self-portrait really feeling like it captures one moment as opposed to this portrait of someone else that is like you want it to remain dynamic. And now I'm
Mhm.
also like, okay, not only do I want to know what your friend's mom or other friends have to say about the painting, I also want to know what she thinks about it in 20 years. Or if
Yeah.
someone showed it to her 10 years ago, what her
Yeah.
back then like
Oh, that's
would
weird.
say. And I bet it would still capture something, but it's like, do you even know? And would her in 20 years be able to say like, yeah, this has like it evolves, as you do, your mirroring always shifts. I don't know
Yeah.
if that makes sense, but it's like if we as human beings are mirrors and we're always reflecting things, and you can never stop reflecting. Well, what you're reflecting is always going to change. So you're always visually showing something different.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah,
So
I'm mostly
are
just
you
curious, like, what other people
Yeah.
would think about it. Like, people who
Yeah.
don't know her, where
No,
it's just a portrait of someone.
I'll be honest, I'm dying to see it.
I know, I
Whenever
don't
you
wanna
feel comfortable to share, I'm
I
excited to
will.
see
I'll
it.
let you'll be the first one to know. Yeah,
Oh,
I
let's
mean,
see.
I don't really want to share it until
No, of
she's
course, of
comfortable
course.
sharing it.
Yeah.
But that's also a strange new thing about this painting is I've never finished a painting, and not really, well, at least since I've done the social media thing where now I'm actually comfortable sharing my artwork and not insecure about it. I've never felt like not sharing it. I've never felt
Yeah.
like this doesn't like it almost feels like sacred in a way, which
Mhm.
it sounds so dramatic, but that's really how it feels.
Yeah.
And so I don't really want to share it until she is comfortable sharing it.
Yeah.
So, but
Well, and I
I
think
think eventually I would like to share it because I
yeah.
do really
I
like it.
think with sacred things, there is something about like wanting to have an established relationship with it before you engage other perspectives. That it's like,
Mm,
I'm going to keep this to myself for a little bit until it feels like even though your relationship with the painting is going to shift and change, and I'm sure hers will too, it's like, I still want to feel like I have a solid relationship with this painting formed before we invite in other um mirrors.
yeah. Other mirrors, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
True.
Final question. If you did try and do this again in another painting, do you think you could do it of still life? Do you think it would have to be a portrait for it to get this thing?
Uh-huh.
And if you did try to recreate it, how would you go about trying to recreate this feeling?
That's a good question. Well, so many good questions today.
I'm
Um,
curious. I'm like
no,
I love
because
hearing about it. I want to know.
yeah. Um, yeah, sorry, I feel like it's mostly been me talking about this today, but it's just it's been on my mind for like since we last recorded basically.
No, and it's
I was
fascinating to
eager to
me.
share it
I'm so
cuz it's
enjoying it.
like it's not happened in a while that I've had like a singular moment that radically shifted my like as I said. But
Right. Like a paradigm
it's
shift you
interesting.
can point to.
Yeah, exactly. Paradigm shift I can point to. Precisely that. But it is interesting that you asked, like, what if it's not a portrait? Because basically, as soon as this portrait was done, we started discussing the possibility of a second a second portrait of her because I was like, listen, I need to paint something, and I don't know what else to paint. Like, it's a weird feeling to be like, I feel like I really accomplished something here, but what the heck do I paint now? And so the natural response was like, I guess I could paint you again. And she asked like, okay, what if it's like she kind of had the same question of like, what if it's a faceless portrait? Like what if it's a
Love
portrait of
that.
me but my face is not in it? And she didn't really want to clarify how she imagined that to be because I'm like, okay, do you mean like your face is like turned away or
Right.
or like um like objects
Right. Like what do
like
you
objects that are kind of like characteristically things that she like has or uses, you know? Like for me
Yeah.
it would probably be like my notebook and like this type of pen
A
um or
paintbrush.
something like that.
Spinach.
A paintbrush. Spinach. Yeah. Um but he's not an object, he's a little angel baby
That's
boy.
true. That's
Where is
true.
he? Oh, he's on the window. But yeah, it's interesting that her mind went to almost like a still life being a portrait of her.
Yeah. Well, and I
Which
didn't
is
even
something
think
that
about like objects that are indicative of you and like would you want even if she's like, "Oh, like there's a difference between like a notebook and a pen and your notebook and your pen, right?" And so
yeah.
it's also like if she said like I don't know, these are the things, obviously she's moved away, so would you be like, can you send me pictures of these items that you have? Or would you, I think there would also be a difference between like her just saying the generic item, and then there's also a difference with like you picking items that
Yeah, I would agree with you
relate.
there.
Yeah.
But then I was very skeptical about this, like basically a still life as a portrait.
Yeah.
And I'm still pretty skeptical about it because there is something so I mean, when I go to an art museum and I look at the portraits that are on display, I look in the eyes first. Like a portrait, at least that type of portrait is unique because you're not just observing the painting is also observing you.
Right.
So a portrait where the eyes are like looking out onto the viewer that's kind of another type of intersubjectivity.
Yeah.
Like where you're not just looking in the mirror, you're also seeing yourself looking back at you in the mirror. And so when that isn't there, I feel like it's a completely different experience and like viewing it. And because of that, I feel like the goal, like what I think such a portrait can accomplish has to be different, but I don't know. And so I'm not really sure how to do that yet.
Yeah.
I'm doing like a study at the moment. She took a picture sitting in front of the portrait, and so I'm painting that, but I think I'm going to cut out the space in the canvas where the portrait was.
Wow, cool. I love that. That is so cool. That is so cool. I love that. Because I was like, is it going to be like
Thanks.
super mise in a beam of all of the paintings? But it's like, no, you can't.
Probably.
Oh, no, that's just such a good idea.
But like, it's like mise in a beam, but like not.
Absence.
I don't know. I almost thought like, what if I put a mirror? What if I put a mirror in there?
Right.
But
that's
yeah. But I don't really know. Maybe currently the plan is to cut out that space and maybe something goes behind it, but I'm not really sure. But the faceless portrait thing is still a question that I'm kind of pondering. I don't know, like, if you think that could, or like a landscape. Like,
right,
could a
because
landscape
that
be a
was my other
portrait?
thought, was like a nature scene. And part of me is like, well, there is one spot in my backyard that is like a little meditation bench, and it's where I do yoga every morning, that I'm like, there is something of me in that like, if someone painted that, I think it would capture some of my energetic signature. But I think specifically the eyes, hearing you say that, I think it kind of shifted in my mind a little bit, that just the impact on the viewer is going to be so different when you are being witnessed to.
I agree.
And so I think I agree with you that would have to be, like, not that you couldn't create some similar sense, but it would be really different than an actual portrait of a face. I do think it would also be interesting with this other style that you have in a lot of your self-portraits that are blurred or using the panorama where you move a little bit. That isn't quite as realism, but is still,
for example,
a face, like how that would shift the feeling too. But no, I think I agree with you, but I'd love to hear, as you experiment with it, what does shift and change. I'm excited to see and know and hear about it.
Thanks. Yeah, I'll say one last thing about these sort of panorama ones. I think
please.
this was me trying to capture movement in a single image before I sort of, I don't know, I haven't done a painting like this in a while, and I don't think I will anymore. Not because it was fun to do. It was fun to do, but now I find it I'm much more captivated by the possibility of being able to capture movement in what is ultimately synthesized as a single image.
Yeah.
that's immediately intelligible as a single image, but in such a way that it captures movement still, and not by the actual image, like with a panorama like this, where it's like, oh, you can see, like, the multiple
Right.
faces is what is indicative of the movement, but actually just something else about it,
Yeah.
capturing the dynamic. I think that's a really interesting goal to have for painting that
Yeah.
I've kind of been experimenting with lately.
Yeah. No, and I think that makes a lot of sense too, because I guess I didn't realize that that was kind of your thought behind the panoramas, and I always kind of thought
Me
that it
neither.
was a Isn't that
I
funny?
like in
Yeah.
hindsight sort of, but at the time I wasn't like a painting has to be dynamic and
Right. This
that
is how I
was
add
I just
movement.
yeah, but
I do think my read of that for you, which is just interesting to know too, that like the way I think about your artistic experience without actually having heard you say anything about that. Um,
it's exciting to hear.
but I was always struck by this idea of like there is something about you, because those panoramas are almost always self-portraits. And so I always viewed it as like there is something about your experience as you that you feel like a still image
Hmm.
didn't quite capture. Like there was something
Huh.
um dynamic about the experience of being Lauren that came through in this way. But now hearing like this
Hmm.
description of the technique, it makes sense that it's like, well, yeah, that might be true, but also I still want to try and capture that same feeling in the still image too.
Yes. Yes. Like I think that's right, and that's sort of what I was trying to capture with those sort of paintings.
Yeah.
Cuz like there's this sort of trite saying of like, "Oh, everybody's like I'm a different person each moment," sort of thing. Um and I guess it was sort of capturing that in a way. Um but yeah, I don't
Yeah.
really it's almost yeah. Um I know we're like I don't want to like go on off on a whole nother tangent like
Oh, you're good.
but yes, lots of very interesting insights about my art have occurred in the past
Yeah.
couple of weeks.
No,
And
that this has
I'm very
been
like I have
fascinating.
no idea how it's going to change how I paint.
Yeah.
Um which is part of the thing I'm most curious to see is like for one what other people think of that portrait, but also like how will I paint differently now?
Yeah. Well, and it makes me
Yeah.
excited both as someone who gets to have these conversations with you to like as a thought partner, it makes me excited, but also as a fan of your painting, it makes me excited
Oh.
to witness. I don't know. It's just cool to see it. So
Yeah.
I think it's really cool, and I'm excited to see
Oh, that's too nice.
it.
Oh, stop. You're too sweet. Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Cool.
This is awesome. And hello, goodbye.
It's not Wednesday. It's not Wednesday. And you're welcome.
The Unwritten Aesthetic is a bi-weekly podcast from the Cohere Collective that features philosophical artist or artistic philosopher Lauren Bush and question asker and meaning maker Reese Brown. Please subscribe to The Unwritten Aesthetic wherever you may be listening, and if you enjoyed the episode, consider leaving us a like, a 5-star rating, and or a review. And sharing the episode is a really wonderful way to kickstart meaningful conversations in your own life. If you want to stay up to date on all things The Unwritten Aesthetic, you can follow the Cohere Collective on any social media platform at the Cohere Collective, and check out our other content and offerings at thecoherecollective.com. To explore Lauren's work, head to laurenbushpaints.com and follow her on Instagram and YouTube at laurenbushpaints. If you're interested in working with Reese to find and pursue your purpose, head to thecoherecollective.com to explore life coaching options. A huge thank you to Jack Corbett for the Unwritten Aesthetics music, and thank you all for being here today and exploring the Unwritten Aesthetic with us. As always, we hope you feel like you are living more coherently. Until next time, love.